A group of organizations who are speaking out on the current state of the humanitarian deterioration in Gaza will be hosting a mass protest to the United States Embassy in Johannesburg tomorrow. This protest is in solidarity with the people of Palestine and coincides with Al-Quds Day. It's an annual pro-Palestinian event held typically on the last Friday of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan to express support for Palestinians. Let's talk about it with Zaakir Ahmed Mayet, who is an activist, attorney and geopolitical analyst. Zaakir, good morning to you and welcome. We've shared in the introduction there what Al-Quds Day is, that it falls on the last Friday of the fasting month of Ramadan. But just take us a little bit more into its philosophical and historical roots.
Thank you very much for having me on the show this morning, Iman, and it's a pleasure to be on the show with you. With regards to Al-Quds Day was established in 1979, the year of the Islamic Revolution, and the leader of the Islamic Revolution at the time, Imam Khomeini, stated that all individuals that are peace-loving, that are justice-loving, must recognize the oppression that has been leveled against the Palestinian people, and that the last day of the holy month of Ramadan should be the day that we renew our vows to fight against injustice, particularly within the Palestinian context. It is for this particular reason that this tradition has been continued on, not just by Muslims, but all peace-loving and justice-loving people around the world. That is why when you look at the footage over the years from Toronto to Cairo, from Cairo to Cape Town, and even to Tehran itself, you see people from vast spectrums of the community coming forward in unity, jointly, expressing their support for the Palestinian people. And I think the current situation amplifies the reason for Quds Day, that there needs to be popular support so that we can bring an end to the genocide, so that peace reigns not just for the Palestinian people, but those that have Israeli citizenship. Because as we know in South Africa, it wasn't just the black South Africans that suffered, it was the white South Africans that were suffering from indoctrination and the yoke of oppression of apartheid. And liberation is for each and every one of the South Africans, and hence it should be the same for Palestinians. So it's a very important day on the global calendar, and we are very proud as South Africans, particularly considering the steps that the South African government has taken to have a large event such as Quds Day taking place on Saturday the 6th outside the U.S. consulate at 2 p.m.
So as you say, these rallies have now become a global phenomenon, and you can see them happening all across the world. Why are you going to the U.S. consulate in Sandton and not the Israeli embassy, given that, you know, what is central is what is happening in terms of the conflict in the Middle East, the Israel-Hamas conflict right now?
I think it's a brilliant question, because if you look at it, it seems counterintuitive. However, the Israeli regime would not be able to perpetrate the atrocities that they are currently perpetrating without the support of the United States. That despite the ICJ's ruling that there's a plausible case for genocide, despite the fact that interim measures had been issued and the Israeli regime had not complied with the same, despite the fact that the Security Council had ruled that there needs to be an immediate ceasefire, Israel has violated all of these, and this is only with the support of the United States. In fact, the reward that was received by Israel for this conduct was increased military aid package that was given by the United States to Israel in the form of 25 F-35As, 1,800 2,000-pound bombs, and 500 500-pound bombs. And then you have the additional support of glide kits to turn these into precision weapons. Now, it's very clear what these weapons have been used for. It's been used to commit a genocide, and this is very clearly stated by the UN Special Rapporteur for Palestine, Francisca Albanese, as she has asked for an embargo, and this is the response of the United States. Further to that, we see the current conduct of Israel committing egregious acts, attacking a consulate in Syria, attacking aid workers from the World Food Kitchen, despite having full coordination, etc. This is only because they have the support of one of the largest powers in the world.
Well, let's stop there for a second, Zaakir, sorry. So, you know, talking about the World Central Kitchen and the attack which the Israeli armed officials or the Israeli Defense Force officials are saying was a mistake. And there was this half-an-hour phone call between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, warning Israel to take steps to address the crisis or face consequences. And this is what is seen as one of the sort of starkest warnings given to its traditional ally. Do you see a change in the U.S.'s position, also given, even though they abstained from that vote in the Security Council vis-a-vis a ceasefire, that was a break in a position that they had traditionally taken on the matter of a ceasefire?
I don't see material changes on the ground. And the reason for that is that I don't believe one develops a conscience 6 months on, after seeing over 33,000 people, majority of whom are women and children, being massacred, and suddenly there's this change because 4 individuals the figures are actually 7 now, were martyred in Gaza, and they happen to be foreign nationals. I don't think that a conscience would develop because of that. I think there's a geopolitical and strategic reason for that. I think that the region is on the cusp of a massive explosion, considering what has happened in Damascus. And when we look at that, we see the United States trying to rein Israel in to some extent. Yet the military aid support is still there, the logistical support is still there. The United States continues to fly their drones for surveillance and provide that integrated surveillance picture to the Israelis. And this is a continuation of the aggression. The only tangible way that change will occur on the ground, I believe, is if military aid is stopped and financial aid is stopped to Israel, and this would be the pressure point. Right now, we only have words. We've had words for the last 6 months, and it doesn't change the fact that there's famine, there's starvation, there is attacking of hospitals, there's attacking of civilians, and the footage is clear to see. The United States will not change their position. I don't believe it's going to result in any tangible change unless there's action. And so far, we've just been given words for the last 6 months.
So it's a difficult situation. I'm going to come back to the humanitarian impact. In fact, we will be speaking to UNICEF a little bit later in the program about the plight specifically around acute malnourishment in the affected areas. 30% of children under the age of 2 in Gaza are acutely malnourished. These are what the experts and aid workers are saying. So we'll get there in a moment. But inside the story, Zaakir, is also intertwined a number of different things, and chief among them are the scores of hostages that still have not been reunited with their families, Israeli hostages. How do you, I mean, what is the message then in looking at the plight of Palestinians? And people often say, well, you can't conflate the two things, but they are deeply intertwined in the story. What is the position on those Israelis who are also saying, well, we're also waiting for our families? And in fact, this is where campaigns being mounted in Israel right now for basically, criticizing Netanyahu and looking for new elections to kind of go in a different direction, especially around the issue of the hostages. Where does the group and protesters and all of those who have solidarity with the Palestinian cause stand on the issue of the hostages?
There's different ways of looking at it, but I think the most factual way of looking at this matter is that the deal is on the table. It has been on the table since the very beginning. The resistance factions have said that release the Palestinian prisoners, majority of whom are administrative detainees, and this would resonate with South Africans being held in detention without charge for an indefinite period. I think there's nothing more grotesque than that, to be held in prison and incarcerated for no reason whatsoever, simply because you happen to be Palestinian. This is exactly what happens with the Palestinians, not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, particularly the West Bank. And children under the age of 12 are being held by Israel. So the deal was that we will release all the hostages and you will release all the prisoners. In fact, since the 7th of October, Israel has embarked on a major campaign to take Palestinian hostages. In fact, Major General Uzi Dayan gave a very interesting lecture approximately 3 weeks weeks ago to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, and he indicated that the strategy of Israel at the beginning of the war was to find the family members of resistance fighters in Gaza, kidnap them, and that would be their bargaining tool. So I think if there has to be a release of hostages and sympathy for hostages, it has to be equally applied, because this is an issue then of humanity. And there are Palestinian hostages, and the deal is on the table. And right now, and that is why there's conflict within Israel, is because Netanyahu is not willing to engage in this exchange, and he's only interested in his own political survival. So that is the position, that we cannot start this timeline on the 7th of October. There have been numerous reports, numerous UN reports, especially from OCHA, speaking about the administrative detention, the detention of children, detention of women, and right now we have the right-wing Prime Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir stating that they're going to exact revenge on prisoners. In fact, information just came out yesterday about the manner in which hostages are being kept by Israel, that they have taken from Gaza. They have been tied so tightly around their arms and their legs that it has caused a cutoff in circulation, therefore necessitating amputations of hands and legs.
Yeah.
And this is without any trial, etc. So we have to balance this, and we cannot start the timeline on the 7th of October.
All right. Again, a lot of debate around this one. What's expected tomorrow? Our understanding is a mass protest, including a number of different organizations. Tell us who's represented and what's expected to happen.
Well, there's various representatives from various religious organizations and civil society organizations. It would be very difficult for me to list them all. But what I can say is that a previous protest had been organized by the same committee, and we had anticipated 200 people at the time. We were fortunate enough to have major outpouring of support from the South African population, and we ended with 5,000. So we anticipate a similar response. Yes, we understand that there is fatigue. We understand that there is solidarity fatigue. But I believe that in each and every one's hearts, we know that we have a greater purpose. We need to come together for peace and justice. And that is what the purpose is, to ensure that there is justice within the Palestinian cause, and that the Palestinians receive the message that they are not alone, that they are besieged, they are being murdered, they are being genocided on a daily basis. Yet the South African population is there with them, supporting them.